Hello and welcome to another episode of me answering questions that you guys asked me over on the YouTube community tab and also over on my Twitter. So if you want to submit questions for these in the future, just watch those places and you can submit a question next time. With that said, let's hop right in. So we're going to start with the YouTube community questions, and the first one we have is by, and I don't know how to pronounce your name, but Genor VDW, and they ask, how do you feel about Halo bleeding players? Obviously that has been making its rounds around YouTube. Everyone's talking about Halo and its declining player base. Doom and gloom, is Halo dying, all that good stuff. We've heard it all, and here's the thing. While I do think it's very unfortunate to see Halo Infinite's numbers go down slightly on a daily basis, there are definitely some caveats to that. One, everyone is looking specifically at the Steam numbers on PC. Halo as a franchise has always been on Xbox, so it is likely the franchise could have a little bit more staying power on the Xbox, or people could even be playing through the Microsoft Store on PC. The Steam numbers alone aren't the full story. Now that said, the declining player base is kinda to be expected. Halo Infinite came out and it had a lot of hype, and a lot of people were pumped to jump into the new Halo game. It had been 6 years since the last one, and a lot of Halo fans were itching for a new Halo experience, and on top of that, 2021 in general was just a pretty dry year in terms of new and fun video games. So when Halo came out and was admittedly pretty decent, a lot of people jumped on to play games and probably had a decent amount of time for the time they played. However, the amount of content and some of the issues with customization and bugs and everything like that haven't necessarily been dealt with yet, and so we kind of had to expect a drop in players because your more casual fans or fans from other games were only going to stick around and deal with that stuff for so long before they went off to play other things. That is especially true about PC players, especially with this being a free-to-play game. Free-to-play player bases will jump all over the place depending on whatever the hottest game is that week. With the game being free-to-play on PC, it made it a lot easier for people to just try the game out, but likewise there also wasn't really a commitment to stick around once they got their fill, especially on PC where there's so many other options you could be playing, whether it's other free-to-play games or various other games that cost money. And that kind of goes the same thing for console. There's so many things kind of fighting for your attention. For a game to hold your attention for the long term, it has to be really solid, and Halo Infinite isn't necessarily there yet. Now that said, the Season 2 delay was also a pretty big blow, I think, to the player numbers, because people are having to look so far out before we're going to get any new meaningful content, or at least that's what we think, unless 343 kind of drops something and surprises us. I'm hoping we see a kind of revitalization as 343 gets back in the new year and starts to get some updates and fix the game a bit and eventually roll out new content. Hopefully we see players come back, or just new players pick up the game in general, but that's to be determined. We'll have to kind of wait and see what happens, but I don't think it's doom and gloom yet. I think Halo Infinite is definitely still very alive, and even at that has the opportunity to still bring in more players. It doesn't have to be perpetually kind of a bleeding of players. Next up, Goopta asks, what are your thoughts on Halo Infinite's ranked mode? It sucks. It's really bad. It's really easy to get to Onyx. If you play a decent amount and you kind of have a basic understanding of what's going on in Halo, you're probably going to be able to hit Onyx pretty easily, especially if you're playing with friends and not solo queuing. But once you get to Onyx, it is one of the most inconsistent and frustrating experiences I've probably ever had in a multiplayer game. What the system seems to do, even though it kind of lays it out to you, is it heavily incentivizes your KD ratio, but it determines your CSR gains and losses based on an arbitrary system where some algorithm in the game tries to determine how well you should do in a specific game, and then you basically have to win the game and outperform that number to rank up very much. So you'll end up with a ton of games where you win games and only gain 1 or 2 CSR, and then you'll lose a game and you'll lose like 10 CSR, and so it can be very frustrating. And there's so many stories online, and I've experienced them myself, where you can have nights where you go overwhelmingly positive in terms of win-loss and barely gain any CSR, or there's even cases where you can go super positive and still lose CSR if you lose the wrong matches or just have one crappy game. I really don't like the rank system, and I hope it's something that they overhaul here in the new year, because currently it's just frustrating and not very fun to grind. I personally would prefer a system that much more heavily just rewarded CSR based on wins and losses, but I understand some people don't like that. However, my argument to that would be that if you are outperforming your teammates and you are carrying on a frequent basis over a large sample size of games, you are going to win more games than you lose if you're playing the game properly and not just playing for stats. So it kind of works itself out over the long term if you prioritize win-loss, whereas right now it just seems all over the place and it's kind of random. Next up, Punchy 2.0 asks, what weapons do you think they should add to the game first. I mean, there's a ton of weapons they should add to the game from previous Halos. Just off the top of my head, things like the brute shot were pretty fun, or obviously something like the DMR would be pretty cool, but I also think they probably should add just totally new weapons into Halo Infinite. I hope when they start adding weapons and stuff into the game, it's not just 100% retreads of old content, and instead we get some new cool and creative ideas. Next up, Anthony Romero asks, do you think there should be armor exclusively unlocked for reaching certain milestones? I do. I think it would be really cool if you could unlock different cosmetics for doing certain campaign challenges like lasso or hitting certain ranks in matchmaking. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the direction this game is going, where it seems to be heavily prioritizing the store and the battle pass and microtransactions, but in an ideal world, I would love to see cool armors and armor coatings and weapon coatings and all that stuff given to people who do unique and different challenges, and then they could show those things that they earned off in game, sort of like we did back in Halo 3. Germ Guy says, how do you feel about Halo Infinite having 7 human maps, 2 Forerunner maps, and 1 Banish style map? And then they go on to say that while they think human style maps are cool, I know Halo has way more potential than just human themed maps, and I pretty much totally agree here. I hope once we start getting some new maps here in Halo Infinite pretty soon, that we get some cool new aesthetics and it's not just more of the same stuff. Next up, Shock Gaming asks, what does your ideal Halo progression system look like? And to that, I would say some combination of what we have now with Halo Reach with Halo 3. And so what I mean by that is you take Halo 3 and you have specific armors and armor coatings and stuff that you can unlock for different achievements or different challenges or hitting different ranks. And then on top of that, you have an overwhelming level similar to Halo Reach, where you can level up playing any type of game mode, whether it's social, ranked, or various PvE modes that could be added in the future. And then you also keep in the Halo Infinite system where you still have the seasonal battle passes that would have the themed content for that season. You'd combine all of that together and hopefully end up with a pretty cool system. I think that's probably what I would do. It might need a little bit of fine tuning, but that's just kind of the thought I'm throwing out there off the top of my head. Now moving on to some questions that were submitted on Twitter. Shy Clover asks, will you still be doing Halo content or branch out to some of your other favorite games unless Halo is your favorite? Well, currently, in all honesty, the only game I've really played since Halo Infinite dropped has been Halo Infinite, so I don't really have too many plans to branch out at the moment because I'm not really playing anything else. However, in the future, if content kind of does dry up as we're waiting for Season 2, I might dabble here and there into some different stuff, but I've never done a very good job of doing variety content on the channel, even though that was originally what I set out to do on the channel, which was just to review FPS games from all over time, and that's kind of fallen by the wayside as obviously all I do is Halo content. Next up, Bob Tominick asks, how did you get started with streaming? There's been multiple different times that I started streaming. When I was in college living in the dorms, I used to play a ton, and I mean a ton, of League of Legends, and this was way back, so it was in the earlier days of Twitch, not when it was brand new or anything, but everyone was still kind of figuring things out on Twitch, and I would watch the big League of Legends streamers at the time, a lot of which seemed to be completely gone, but I would watch them stream League of Legends all the time, and I tried to give it a shot a couple times, but never really stuck with it or anything like that, and I didn't really have a setup that I could properly stream on or really cared to really mess with it, because all I really wanted to do was just play League of Legends at the time, and so I didn't mess too much with streaming at that time. Then when Halo 5 came out, I was playing a ton of Halo 5, and I was trying to kind of play competitively and get into the competitive scene, and then since I was doing that and I was playing a ton of Halo 5, I decided, why don't I try streaming it a little bit? And so I probably streamed Halo 5 4 or 5 nights a week, 5 to 6 months of the game, and I eventually kind of just gave up on it because I was a little bit burnt out, one with the game, but also just streaming in general at the time because I wasn't really getting any viewers or anything like that, because I wasn't putting in any effort into content kind of outside of Twitch, and that's really what you need to do if you're going to stream on Twitch in this day and age, unless you're a pro or a high level competitive player where your name can bring value. But other than that, you need to make content on other platforms to bring people to your Twitch streams, and I wasn't doing that at the time. I kind of just got discouraged by the whole thing, and then eventually kind of in 2019 I started making YouTube videos. I think it was 2019, and after making YouTube videos for a couple months, I decided, hey, why don't I try and give streaming a shot again? And so I kind of did. For a long time I was streaming variety, just whatever FPS game I wanted to play at the time, and then once MCC dropped on PC, I finally got a little bit more of a focus, and then I pretty much for the most part exclusively started streaming Halo, other than odd streams here and there where I'd try different stuff, or I had like a 2-month kick where I streamed Valorant all the time. But other than that, you know, it's mostly Halo streams. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started with streaming and kind of how it's been going. Mustafa asks, if you could add 4 campaign DLC to Infinite, where would they be, who would be in it, and what's the story? Now I won't won't get too deep into this one because I'm not a lore person, as I've mentioned many times on the channel, but the one thing that I want the story DLC in Halo Infinite to do is to explore stories outside the Master Chief. I want to see an Arbiter DLC, or DLC from other Spartans, or DLCs even from other time frames in the Halo universe. I don't think they all need to continue the Master Chief story, and so I hope we get to see varied places, varied locales, varied characters, and all sorts of fun stuff. Hopefully they really play around with it and try and be innovative with the DLC, because I think there's a lot of potential there, but they could also go the safe route and just continue the DLCs right where the story left off and have you playing the Master Chief once again. Aaron Respect asks, how much have you spent on Infinite so far? Honestly, not that much. I bought the more expensive battle pass, which was honestly a waste because now I've had the battle pass finished for weeks, and on top of that I gave away some credits, so I don't know if you want to count that, but other than that I did buy one of the big packs of credits, but it's currently just sitting in my Halo Infinite wallet because 343 hasn't been adding anything that I find worth buying, although they did already get my money, so I guess they got the W there. But other than some of the esports skins and the red and gold armor coating bundle thingy, I haven't bought anything in Halo Infinite, and obviously that's more than some people have bought, but if Halo Infinite had cooler things and more reasonable prices, I would probably spend a lot more money in the store. Next up, Kevin CoolX, the big and famous YouTuber, asks, why do you continue to dodge playing ranked with me? I'm Diamond 4, I deserve some respect. And well, that's because you haven't hit Onyx yet, Kevin, so once you hit Onyx, I'll consider playing with you, but until then, you know, I just can't risk it, you know? Next up, Zake asks, if they brought back champion ranks, would you rather have it be top 250, 500, 750, or 1000? I think that kind of just depends on the active player base. One thing that I hated with Halo 5 was in some of the more dead playlists, you would literally get champion just by hitting Onyx, and that kind of defeats the purpose and is kind of boring. So it'd be cool if maybe 343 monitored playlists, saw how many players were actively playing them, and kind of based it maybe per season on a percentage of players that hit the high ranks in the previous season or something like that. Maybe leave it a little bit flexible so it's not just a steadfast 1000 players or 250 or something like that. And that, guys, is going to do it for the Q&A video. If I didn't answer your question, I'm sorry about it. Try and submit a question again next time if you'd like. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. I now stream over on YouTube Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so catch me live on those days. And also make sure you follow me over on Twitter and Instagram. And with that said, I'll see you all next time.